Welcome back to the channel and thank you for watching. In this video I actually have Andy Signore at Popcorn Planet and Christopher Melcher to thank for going through the law and raising this very point. I did touch on this very briefly in my video yesterday, and it relates to this argument about Juror 15. So this latest filing by Amber's lawyers, specifically Elaine Brederhoft, etc., the leaked document now suggests that there's a slightly different, nuanced argument to Elaine's point, which ultimately doesn't really add anything, and many people might find this to be slightly disingenuous because it is ultimately shifting the blame, whereas the original law and the original code cited will still stand, and so I'll explain briefly why here. So in this leaked document it now suggests that Elaine is essentially blaming the court staff for not correctly picking up the identity of the juror, and therefore there should be a mistrial or throw out the verdict. Now, whilst it may very well be that the court staff are responsible for checking the ID of each juror, it remains counsel's duty to object to any member of the jury, or indeed any details on that jury panel right at the very beginning. And as in the footnote that I raised to you in my video yesterday, they acknowledge that any error of information on that jury panel is not ground for a mistrial nor for appeal. However, in the leaked document, which seems to relate to this latest filing, if that is all accurate, then it now seems that Elaine is essentially trying to blame the court staff for the same thing, but without citing the original code, which places the duty upon counsel to raise those objections. So ultimately, and a long story short, it doesn't change anything at all, and it doesn't change my opinion. In fact, if anything, if this does turn out to be true, then in my opinion, this is at the very least very slightly deceptive, because it is quoting something which essentially makes it look like it's the court's fault or the court staff's fault for not picking up this juror who may or may not have been incorrectly identified. Now, aside from the fact that this juror showed up for jury duty, did the duty just like anybody else, and shouldn't make any difference, aside from that fact, this juror would not have been assigned to, or would not have known that he or she was going to be assigned to this case for some time, and so it wouldn't have made any difference anyway. And I think it will be entirely wrong for anyone to suggest, much less conclude, that this juror was, let's say, a Johnny Depp fan or anti-Amber. So either way you look at it, this juror was just like any other juror, called for duty, turned up and served. So whether or not incorrectly identified, whether or not the date of birth was incorrect, whether or not the court staff had a duty to check that and didn't, it was still counsel's duty to object to each juror. They didn't, and in that footnote in relation to the Virginia Code that I referred to yesterday, it is not a ground for mistrial, and it is not a ground for appeal if that information is incorrect. So if anyone is worried about this, or on the other side of the fence thinks that this is now a golden nugget with which to get this verdict thrown out, in my opinion, in my view, and it seems in the view of Christopher Melcher too, I will link their video in the description below, by the way, so you can go watch that one as well for some more details. But in our view, it would seem that this is going absolutely nowhere. It is not going to make any difference. And ultimately, to be quite frank, it seems a little bit poor taste to be picking on one juror and trying to throw out the entire verdict on that basis. So those are my views. I will link that other video in the description below. There are one or two more points to follow, such as the insurance and another thing about Amber Heard, which popped up today, which is going to follow in another video. So make sure you subscribe and hit that bell icon and like the video so that YouTube will deliver those videos up to you. In the meantime, I thank you for watching.